Firstly, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome all of our attendees tonight and to thank you for taking the time to join us, particularly into your evening. My name is Jenny Waters. I'm one of the two co-chairs of the PRCA Next Gen London Group. And as my day job, I'm a senior consultant at a business called Hanson Search, where I support organisations to attract brilliant communications talent, and I also help comms professionals to find opportunities and develop their careers. But as some of you will know, and for those that don't, the Next Gen Group is a forum providing information, support and advice to practicing PR and comms professionals from usually graduate level all the way up to account director and the equivalent on the in-house side as well, of course. But tonight I'm delighted to be hosting this event and talking about sustainability and green communications, and importantly, how to progress and develop a career in the space. It's a topic that I believe to be really important, particularly with our ever increasing awareness of the fragility of our planet, upcoming events like COP26 in November, and today's media sort of rightly fueling the need for transparency and creating an increased expectation on all businesses to map and manage their social and environmental impact. I'll hand over to our expert panelists in a moment to introduce themselves more fully. But I'm delighted to be joined tonight by Edward Hopkins, founder at Dark Green PR, Amanda Farrant, Assistant Director of Communications at Action Against Hunger, and Heidi Budino, Sustainability Strategist and Communications Consultant. So I'm keen to jump right in and to hear from each of our panelists. But for those watching, please do submit questions and comments in the chat function as we go. We'll be opening questions up to the floor after our main discussion and are really keen to have as much involvement from you guys as we can. So firstly, it would be great to hear from each of you, if you wouldn't mind just telling me a little bit about your current role and a brief overview of some of the work that you're doing or have been doing in the sustainability communication space. So Amanda, do you want to kick us off? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, delighted. And yeah, it's part of the course these days, isn't it? Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you to everyone who's joined the panel today. As Heidi said, I'm Assistant Director of Communications at Action Against Hunger. Action Against Hunger is a charity that's been running for 40 years across the world. We work in nearly 50 countries. And in the UK, the Action Against Hunger UK office has recently started also working actually on hunger issues in the UK, which is the first time we've ever felt we had to do that to respond to the crisis here. Hunger is, for the last 5 years, hunger levels have been increasing. So for decades, amazing work was done to reduce hunger levels around the world, particularly severe malnutrition in children. But because of lots of conflicts, because of climate change, because of rising inequality, and now because of COVID, hunger levels are just creeping up and up and up each year. Currently, 690 million people suffer from some form of quite severe hunger, which is pretty shocking. And one child dies pretty much every 13 seconds of malnutrition, severe acute malnutrition. Obviously, we need to treat malnutrition, save people's lives, but increasingly Action Against Hunger is seeing itself not just as a humanitarian responder, but an organisation that needs to actually tackle the causes and start speaking out about some of the issues such as climate change and conflict. And so that's what we've kind of been doing. In our work, we aim to look at how our short-term interventions, such as saving children's lives, can be then turned into long-term solutions, which is really important in order to prevent hunger levels continuing to rise. But in actual fact, for the first time, Action Against Hunger this year is really focusing on climate change across our network, and really beginning to look at the impacts of climate change on hunger. But it's not just climate change, it's conflict and inequality. All of these things have created a perfect storm. That's why it's so important we do these things.
Brilliant. Thank you, Amanda. And Heidi, I'll come to you next. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm an independent sustainability strategist and communications professional. I started my career in PR and communications well over 17 years ago. And since then, really followed my passion for sustainability and creating positive change, where I now specialise in helping companies align their business goals with purpose. And then bringing that strategy to life through creative, impactful sustainability programs, storytelling and so I've had quite a range of experience, to be honest, working in global and boutique communications agencies. That's really where I started. I've also been in a specialist brand purpose consultancy that focused purely on sustainability and purpose. And actually now, most recently, I've been in-house, which is very different, working within Shell and their sustainability corporate reputation team, as well as their retail business, what you think of when you think of their service stations. So yeah, a range of different clients and different issues that I've focused on. So I've had the pleasure of working on lots of the Unilever sustainable living brands like Lifebuoy, Domestos, working on issues around sanitation and hand washing. But I've also worked with bigger supermarkets or corporates like Tesco and Costa Coffee. Aviva I've worked on, which was mainly focused on sustainable finance and the focus on helping consumers more aware of where their pension gets invested. So yeah, I've had a range of experience really, but currently working in the energy sector for Shell.
Brilliant, thank you, Heidi. And Ed, tell us a bit about Dark Green PR.
Thank you. So my name's Ed Hopkins. I'm founder of Dark Green PR. We're an agency that exists exclusively to represent brands that we believe are making a positive impact on the planet. So quite fairly rare in terms of that agency model and values. I started my PR career at a wonderful agency called Brands to Life. I was there for 6 years. Couldn't have asked for a better training. So if you combine that with a year at Greenhouse and now starting Dark Green, it's been almost a decade now that I've been in PR. I absolutely love it. I always recommend public relations as a profession to anyone who asks. But being able to do that, but for brands and people and organisations that we really care about is honestly a dream come true. So I'm very, very happy with how it's all going, and it's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm really excited to sort of answer a lot of the questions. But yeah, in terms of Dark Green, yeah, we are here to bang the drum for brands that deserve to be heard, because I'm sure pretty much everyone on this call, I hope, would agree that at the moment, the brands that really need to be heard and the organisations and the people deserve a lot more of a voice than they are currently getting. So really keen to talk about that.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. And I think firstly, what comes across with each of you is that we can feel your passion and your interest in the work that you do. That is key and obvious. And I suppose my first question, and maybe coming to you, Heidi, is why do you think that passion piece is so important when operating in the sustainability comm space? For people who are hopefully wanting to enter this space as a career, why do you think passion is key?
Well, I mean, first of all, if it's a career in communications that we're focusing on, then communicating on anything, you need to be really passionate about it. You need to really believe in it. And what other topic to be passionate about these days but sustainability and climate change and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, because you know, it's the biggest crisis and issue of our time, and it's a topic that, you know, you need to be passionate about if you're going to communicate it, really. I'm just thinking about where I've had to use my passion in communications. Actually, often is internally, when you're having to win over, you know, apathetic stakeholders who might be more focused on short-term commercial or cost reduction targets, and, you know, you have to try and win them over to make them sort of want to embed or take action on sustainability. So actually, you know, communication skills, coming back to, you know, how to tailor your message or frame your argument to different audiences is really important. So, you know, if you're talking to someone in operations, for example, to try and get them to focus on certain things like waste management, or, you know, topics like that, you know, you need to frame that conversation, or that your communications around how you can save money. So it's, I guess the passion is about, you know, you need to be passionate about this topic in order to change behavior, and to get buy-in from, whether that's consumers, whether it's internal stakeholders. I think passion is hugely important.
Yeah. Brilliant. And Ed, something that you just touched on kind of previously was around, and to kind of echo Heidi's point, around good communications training, that actually, you know, first and foremost in sustainability comms, we're talking about reputation, we're talking about communications, but also that passion piece. And I know that you came firstly from a wider corporate comms background. Do you think that training in comms is important when you're going down the sustainability route?
I can't stress enough how important it is. As Heidi absolutely correctly said, sustainability is, well, the climate crisis, as we should call it, is the defining issue of our time. It has to be viewed that way, and you have to have a passion that corresponds with that, which shows the importance of good communication. So if you're gonna fight that battle, you have to do it with the best tools and have had the best training to make sure you're capable of doing so. So my advice to anyone who perhaps there may well be a few grads or soon to be grads on this call, who are really keen to dive into the sustainability sector, and may well be the sustainability comms sector, and that's brilliant. However, those jobs at the moment, they will increase, are still relatively rare compared to normal corporate and consumer PR roles. So if you do get the opportunity to join a well-respected agency or a really good in-house team and get a really good training, it's so worth it. I'm so grateful for the training I had straight out of university as an intern at Brands to Life, for example. I had brilliant line managers, directors, MDs of divisions and founders. And I was, this sort of wide-eyed university grad. And I was able, not long, I was able to sit next to the founders of the company, Giles Fraser and Sarah Scales, in pitches, and learn and see them directly. And it was amazing. And I wouldn't trade that training for the world. I'm so grateful now that I've had that training. I can now apply it to something that I love and I'm passionate about, and as I said, I believe is the most important thing. But I wouldn't be here today, with Dark Green going really well, if it weren't for that fantastic training beforehand. So it's so important and totally worth it.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think what's really interesting is that each of you are coming at this from quite a different angle, whether that's background in agency or in a not-for-profit or as an independent consultant working with a range of businesses. Amanda, I think in terms of your background and that your work is very multifaceted, as you said, the climate piece, but much wider than that. How important do you think it is to really kind of understand the topics that you're communicating on and making sure that in quite a crowded space, the right messages are coming across and in an authentic way?
Understanding the topic and climate change is quite a complex topic.
Indeed.
Is really important. I actually started working on climate change issues about 15 years ago, when climate change was not really in the, you know, the Al Gore documentary was just doing the rounds, and it wasn't really in the public consciousness. And I was working at a charity called Christian Aid, and they were quite ahead of most other charities at the time who work in the development and humanitarian space. And because we were seeing the kind of impacts on poor people in developing countries, like they were being hit first and worst before it really started showing in the West. And what we found was that there were so many people, you know, we had to have the evidence. We had to have both the qualitative and quantitative evidence. We had to understand how to translate the science, which at that point, nobody had translated it into any kind of normal language that people could understand. We had to find creative ways, really creative ways to actually communicate the message. And I remember one of my favorites was a poster we did at the time, which was a map of Africa almost as an iceberg, and that, you know, most of Africa was underneath, you know, the iceberg, and it was about the melting ice and how that's impacting Africa and things. It was really powerful. And I think, you know, over the years we, you know, definitely found, because there was quite a lot of climate deniers out there, there was also a lot of, you know, you can't just say climate change is impacting this country, because actually it's really complicated. It's not quite as simple as that. And you will get the scientists turning around to you and saying, don't you know, over exaggerate, you need to get it right. And, you know, I think, you know, certainly we at the time were accused sometimes of sensationalizing some of the messages we had. At the time, they were also landing on quite, I wouldn't say deaf ears, but convincing the public what was happening, and that why it was happening was a really difficult message, because basically we were saying this is a problem that is being caused by us, and, you know, we're the enemy here, you know, and trying to get that message across was a very difficult one. And charities kind of tried all sorts of tactics, succeeded and tried and failed, but we kept having to go back each year to the messaging and saying what's working, what's not working, and making sure that our evidence was absolutely tight and that we understood exactly what the impacts of climate change were, and also what the solutions are as well.
Thank you. And I know, coming to you, Ed, that was something that you and I spoke about, you know, kind of in the run up to this conversation tonight, was around the importance of knowing your stuff in the space, that actually you're communicating on, you know, sometimes quite complex but difficult issues, and that, you know, you've really got to know what you're talking about when you're representing clients or businesses or people. Absolutely.
So there's a few reasons there. Firstly, you know, this is comms, and no matter what level you're at, you're going to have to engage with media. And whether journalists in the tech sector, the green sector, corporate, whatever it might be, they know their stuff. That's their job to know, and they will be able to tell if you're pitching a story to them. And you clearly, you know, if you don't know what the Paris Agreement is, or what the recently released Dasgupta review is, or what the relative, you know, state of global warming is, or any of what the big causes are, it's going to show. So it will show to media. So you've really got to do your research there and do your homework. As I said, it's the biggest issue of our time, so we don't really have a good excuse for not learning about it. And then secondly, firstly, it's media will know. Secondly, it's your clients. Your clients will want to know that you're as passionate as them. And secondly, that you know, at least, you know, not far off what they know. They're not going to expect you to know every single detail to what they know for their field, but they do want you to have a very good understanding of the climate crisis, the key drivers, the key issues, some of the academic literature around it. You have to be up to date. I'm very lucky on our team at Dark Green. One of my actual, you know, very best friends, but also from university, but has now become a colleague, is Dr. Josh Wells. He's got a PhD in climate ethics. So I am quite lucky in that for our team, we can lean on Josh a bit and say, Josh, what do you think of this? Can you come give some advice? But he's taught me a heck of a lot. There are other people in the climate sector who've taught me, and I've also done a lot of my own homework. and that's put me and my colleagues in a good position when speaking to media and clients. But it's so crucial. It's also fascinating to learn about, scary at times when you look at the rate of warming and what's happening to the world, particularly the decline in biodiversity. But knowledge is power, and you need as much as you can get if you're going to be communicating what is the most important issue out there.
Brilliant, thank you, Ed. And Heidi, sort of building on what Ed has said there, and again, something that you and I discussed was around the variation of your role, the opportunity to advise a range of different businesses. And I suppose for those that are listening, what are some of the kind of the best bits, but also the practicalities around, advising businesses where there is this increased expectation to manage their social and environmental impact?
Yeah, I mean, the key thing is being really aware of the need for transparency, I think, these days. So when you think about the practicalities, it's not consumers, so general public, but investors. So depending on so many different audiences, the need for transparency on any of these issues is absolutely vital now. There's no hiding from it. With social media, it's the same. And so, yeah, in terms of the different ways or the different roles that you can play in that, you've got, if you want to sort of go into corporate reputation, for example, so more of the corporate side of communications and PR, there's a huge, the big sort of skill set that you need, or the most important thing to be aware of there is reputation, whether that's protecting reputation or enhancing it. And this idea of, being completely aware that transparency is crucial. So you need to really stand up to scrutiny. So tying back any communications to strategy, whether that's, short-term commitments, long-term commitments to the likes of net zero, making sure it's all backed up with action and targets, and is crucial. So companies like Microsoft, who've come out with huge targets, beyond being climate neutral, but climate positive, it's really important to have specific steps that they're going to take, and you communicate those. So it's not enough really anymore to just talk about commitments, but talk about, the steps that you're going to take to reach those commitments. And that's really important in terms of the practicalities of representing clients in that space from a reputation perspective. Then I guess more on if you're thinking more about the consumer side of PR and communications, that's more around sort of, things like behavior change, how you can, as a communications professional, how you can bring the public into your sustainability efforts and strategies, which is probably more focused on being able to take action and bring your consumers into your own journey. But yeah, I think the key thing is around this idea of increased transparency and need for disclosure, and therefore, being even back to what Ed was talking about, you've really got to know your stuff and link back to a company's strategy, because it's not really enough just to communicate. You've really got to demonstrate that you're walking the talk, if you like.
Absolutely. And on that, and coming to each of you, but maybe starting with Amanda, what do you feel is the importance of kind of practicing what you preach, and I suppose your personal footprint in the world? Do you think that is important when you are communicating around sustainability?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's so important to practice what you preach. I would say from a sort of charity perspective, because a lot of charities will do, they're campaigning to change the world, as well as doing the sort of vital work that they need to do to sort of support people with vulnerable people or whatever, or, vulnerable wildlife, whatever it is. There's a lot of campaigning. If you're saying one thing, but you're not actually practicing it either as a charity or even as an individual, you will be caught out. We've seen it with the government and COVID and lockdown restrictions, right? We've seen how people get caught out very easily. And so, it is absolutely vital to make sure, as Heidi said, that you practice what you preach. You've got those strategies in place for us, it's for our organisation or for your corporate or whatever. But you also have to show willing as well, because especially if you are more in the public eye in many ways. And as a communications professional, there's a likelihood that you will be in the public eye sometimes. So it is really, really important.
Thank you. And Ed, I know this is something that you also feel passionately about, is that personal footprint.
Oh, massively so. Yeah, there's a couple of things to touch on to begin with. Earlier, I mentioned how the media you engage with and clients will want to know that you know your stuff. They'll also care about this, because you're when going out there as their PR representative, you are their face. They're not going to want someone or an organization or a group of people who don't share their values. They're really going to want that. And I can say for every single one of our clients at Dark Green, they really value that. They're so pleased that they're represented by an organization where everyone on the team really cares about their personal footprint. I'm not saying we all need to be Greta. I'm not saying that. Greta is amazing. She's a fantastic human being, and I have unbelievable amount of respect for her. But we can try, and we all have a responsibility to try as hard as we can at times. So, well, all the time, really. And whether that's what you eat, how you travel, how you invest your money, what you wear, what type of energy you use, you have to start looking at those areas. The amount of education available out there to help you make better decisions is better than ever. So I think if you're a comms professional in the UK, for example, you're likely going to have these resources at your disposal. So I implore anyone who wants to work in this field to do your research, because if you turn up for an interview with a sustainability comms focused agency or an in-house role where they want you to represent something like that, and you're clearly someone who hasn't taken much care about their own footprint or doesn't care at all, or doesn't at least show they care, it will make an impact. So obviously I can talk about this in more detail, but I don't want to go through sort of every single route of how to be more sustainable. I'm happy to, if anyone's got any specific questions, and I've seen we've already got some good questions coming through, so please do keep them coming, and we'll try and answer each one if we can. But yes, it's so important, and I'm also really, really passionate about helping other comms professionals in those areas. So I've already had other former colleagues and other friends in the PR industry reach out to me saying, "Oh, Ed, can you give me a few recipes for plant-based food? Or can you give me any advice on alternative travel, or can I offset my flights?" Things like that. There's all sorts of areas. So yeah, that's an open-ended offer. If there's anyone on this call who wants any sort of very friendly support, I'm really, really keen to help.
Thank you. And I'd echo, absolutely, as Ed said, please, I can see questions coming through, and I think we'll probably move to the Q&A section quite quickly. As if we were all in person, then that's sometimes the best bit. So we'll do that soon. But kind of one of the final points, and it's something that all four of us have spoken about kind of prior to this call, is around sort of mental health and protecting your mental health, not just as a communications professional, which is a topic that is already being covered a lot within the field at the moment, but when we are talking about these often very big, very complex macro issues at a time of crisis, how do you look after yourself and others around you as a comms person? Heidi, I'll come to you first.
I think in relation to, there's even a word, and I can't remember it off the top of my tongue now, for, when you're really completely desperately worried about the climate crisis, and that itself can have a real impact on your mental well-being. That in itself yeah, it can be really quite devastating for your mental health. I mean, for me personally, I think something that I do is there's some really amazing podcasts out there that give the science around, you know, the climate crisis, and are completely open and transparent about how much of a crisis it really is, but that offer, you know, and talk about solutions and practical ways that you can, you know, do your bit. There's one that I absolutely love, and I listen to it weekly, called Outrage and Optimism. Completely urge you to listen in every week. It's like an hour long. They get incredible speakers, but I think that's important for your mental health, to really sort of, you know, not get too bogged down in the, you know, in the in the depression of it, but to think about solutions, and the fact that, you know, if we all work together and everyone makes change in their behavior and their choices, you know, it is possible, you know, to get there. And just generally, I think surrounding yourself, joining communities. I'm part of a really amazing community called Future Planet. And it's a community that's really growing, but, you know, it's a really positive community that, you know, to talk and share best practice and, you know, ideas and solutions, and, you know, are just a bunch of really lovely people who are all in it together, and who all share the same desire to drive positive change and make a difference. So joining communities is a really good way of protecting your mental health as well.
Thank you. And Amanda, same to you. I know something that we spoke about was, I suppose, your work and I think being able to see very visibly the impact that climate crisis, amongst other things, are having on people. How do you look after yourself?
So, yeah, I mean, in our business, we're dealing with humanitarian crises that are quite horrific. And it, as a communications professional, you will probably, in the sort of arena I work in, you will probably travel to very difficult situations and witness it firsthand. And it can feel utterly overwhelming. You can feel very, very small and very, very helpless. But I think the thing that for me that actually inspires me and keeps, like, because I'm so passionate about what I do and want to bring justice to poorer people in the world, I know that change is hard, change is really difficult, but when I see the amazing people who are doing things against the odds, that's the thing that just makes me go, hang on, I'm just a, you know, wealthy white woman in a, you know, country. Yes, we're affected by climate change, but I'm not being as affected as badly as these people, and that really, really helps me. Now, obviously, COVID has meant we don't travel as much anymore. That's good for the climate, which is really good, you know, in many ways. And we're having to find new ways of actually telling the stories, and we're having to work much more closely with people on the ground who witness it themselves, and we're training up communications professionals in various countries so they can tell a much more authentic story. And again, that is something that so inspires me. We recently trained one of our communications officers in Somalia, Firdausa Hussein, who's a brilliant photographer. She's been trained with video. She's now a brilliant videographer. She's doing such amazing work, and she's one of the only women photojournalists in Somalia. Her story is incredible, and she's really passionate about wanting to do more around sustainability comms. So that actually keeps me going. That's the thing that kind of keeps my mental health going, because I can see the difference that we're making. And on a personal level, what helps me really deal with it all is actually walking, being connected with nature. I moved out of London a couple of years ago, and I walk a lot, as much as I can, by the beach, on the cliffs, on the downs, wherever I can walk in nature, just to feel connected to it and to watch the changes happening and be aware of them. And, you know, I feel then that spurs me on to kind of, you know, watch what I'm eating, think about my travel habits, all those sorts of things.
Thank you. And Ed, coming to you as well. I know this is a passion point for you.
Yeah, mental health's cause very close to the heart for me. Care about it very much, and I'm really glad you put it on the agenda because, as Heidi mentioned, working in the climate sector, I think you were looking for the term, Heidi. Perhaps a different couple of one, maybe climate angst or existential dread, but it really can happen from this, this issue. So I'm glad we're covering it. Amanda's actually touched on a couple already that I think are super important, so I might just build on them. Firstly, in terms of inspiring stories. So I think we need to remember that even as PR professionals, you would think we would be the most immune to news than the average person, perhaps. It does make an impact. Like you can really, if you're reading, depressing story after depressing story after depressing story each day to show you what's happening to the natural world, it's terrible and it can take a toll. So one thing I can recommend is seek out really encouraging, positive news, amazing innovators. Amanda just gave some excellent examples. So find those stories because they do make an impact and they lift you up, and you can come away from it really realizing it's not all bad. Yes, the climate crisis is terrible. We need to address it, but there are some really incredible stories coming out of it of people doing wonderful things. So that's one. Amanda also mentioned being in nature. That's so spot on. I wish I could cite them now, but maybe I can dig them out later on. But there are a significant number of studies now showing that human mental health is boosted so much about being in nature. I'm aware some of us on this call may well be in the urban jungle known as London, and it can be quite hard. I lived there for many years, and I'll be moving back after the pandemic. But it's even there, you've got to try to find some time for green space. That really helps you. I know that sort of sounds funny, working in the green sector and saying get as much nature and green. It sounds sort of cliche, but it really is true. It really does help. That along with exercise, but also just talking about it as much as you can. There's some amazing people out there who will love to listen to what your struggles are and help you and give feedback. We've actually got a pro bono client who focuses on this very specifically. He's not climate related, however, he does talk a lot about his plant-based diet and how that makes him more sustainable. But it's a guy called Paul Minter. He's a former British Army veteran. He did 4 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. He's had several comrades killed, had incredible PTSD and anxiety and depression, some severe problems. So he started his own charity, mental health charity, to help other veterans. And his story is inspiring. And I personally have had moments, even since starting in the sustainability sector, where I've gone, oh gosh, and experience what Heidi was describing a little bit. And speaking to Paul, speaking to the client has helped me, so seek out people like that, engage with them, share with them, and they will help lift you up and you can help lift them up at the same time. That's a couple ones of them there that have helped me.
Thank you, guys. That's brilliant. And it's just so nice to listen to you all. So thank you. I think I'm already, we've got loads of questions coming in. I think we'll probably just move straight to Q&A now. So please do keep them coming. I can see lots of activity happening. Thank you to those that are watching. I think one of the first sort of questions, and open to any of you, or if you both briefly want to give a couple of examples, is Rachel's asked, what is the best place you guys go to keep up to date with climate change news? Are there any websites or sort of Instagram accounts that you would recommend for people who want to find out more and who want to be kept up to date?
Who wants to go first? I don't want to barge in.
Ed, you go.
So that's a great question. The publications that I'm consistently impressed by in terms of regular daily newsletters and bulletins are ED, it's EDIE, and then also Business Green. So I really recommend those to begin with. I also recommend following Damien Clarkson, Damien Carrington at The Guardian and the Guardian's environmental team. Really impressed with some of the work that they do. So that they're also worth following. Roger Harrabin at the BBC. A lot of it's actually social. Follow them on Twitter and Instagram as well, because you get sort of more of a digest. I mean, I've got to be careful here. The list could go on. I can then start reeling off every single climate publication. So I'll probably stop there. But if you want any more specifics, I'm happy to share.
Amanda, is there any you would recommend?
sorry, I'm muting myself. I mean, a lot of the ones that Ed's already talked about, they've really made it their mission to, address climate change. They're doing some really good stuff. And there's, additional names that we tend to look at in our sector. So Matt McGrath, people like that. But I also like The Ecologist. I like some of the articles that, you get in those sorts of magazines. So, yeah, I mean, there's so much out there. I find so for me, and probably it's my age, right? I'm older than probably most people here, is that like I tend to get a lot of news through Facebook, and because a lot of my friends are also really interested in climate change issues, they tend to share a lot of the things that they find. So actually I find, my social network feeds are actually also delivering really interesting content on climate change that other friends of mine are finding, which I find fascinating. I'm particularly interested in the way, the impacts of climate change overseas and what the kind of adaptation methods and solutions that are being, found. So I also follow quite a lot of our sort of sector, humanitarian development channels and media, simply because that's what I'm interested in. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And there are so many good questions coming in. I'm really worried we might not be able to get through them all, so I'm going to keep going. Heidi, maybe coming to you on this one, although again, I'm more than open it up to the panel. But Marshall is asking, how do sustainability communications experts avoid accusations of greenwashing? And could you outline conflicts of interest for consultants when you're balancing sort of stakeholder interests versus sustainability commitments?
I think the key thing is just the age-old rule of having a really comprehensive Q&A that you've really been through, and that you've worked with your teams, with internal stakeholders, and having a really watertight Q&A really, and being prepared for questions is the most important thing. And with greenwashing, I mean, you've just got to make sure that, as I mentioned before, any communications ties back to tangible commitments and action, and that it's authentic, and that it's and that it's watertight, and then it cannot be accused of greenwashing. I mean, as I'm currently consulting at Shell. There will always be accusations of greenwashing from the likes of, Greenpeace or other more campaigning organisations. But, as long as you've got answers that are backed up with proof, not just commitments, but, specific short-term and long-term commitments, then that's all you can do. Some organisations like Shell will just not get away from some of the legacy of some of their actions in the past. It's very, very hard, but I think if it's backed up by commitments that are open and that are disclosed and that you report on, then that's all you can do.
Brilliant, thank you. And maybe Amanda, this one for you perhaps, though again, open to all. Natasha is asking, how do communicators balance showcasing the impact of climate change whilst managing the despair that people feel because of it? How do you find that balance?
Very good question. I think it comes back to that thing about positivity and inspiring stories and authentic voices, hearing from people who've actually made a difference or done something, however small, but something quite challenging, but they've managed to achieve it. And I think that's how, certainly in my sector, that's how we find that balance. it's always very difficult when you're dealing with a crisis, because on one hand, the crisis and the terribleness of it, the awfulness is the bit that gets the media, right? That's what gets into the media. And, that's what our job is to try and get ourselves into the media, because that's the way we raise money in order to be able to deal with these crises, whatever they are. But the thing is that actually very quickly people get fatigued by that kind of crisis message. So you have to find a way of quite quickly, while you're still talking about the crisis, you're also talking about, right, this is what we're doing about it. If you don't start doing that, and then you don't start showing stories of people actually, being given agency themselves to deal with it on the ground, then you'll probably lose yourself along the way, and you won't actually end up getting anywhere. You won't get your messages out there. You won't get pick up in the media. So it's really important to think about like the timing of what you're doing. When is the right time to put out that inspiring story? Can you get the inspiring story? Does it exist? So I think that we approach it at the beginning of an emergency. The trouble is we're dealing with an emergency. Usually if it's climate change related or whatever, it's something that you're having to respond really quickly. You don't have time to sit and go, this is the plan, because it changes every day. But you still have to have something in your mind that says, right, okay, I'm watching the news cycle. When is the right time to move forward with the story, so that it stops just being crisis, and people start getting, they want to see a difference quite quickly. Yeah. They even how.
Yeah, brilliant. And Ed, anything to add there?
Yeah, just a little bit. Amanda's absolutely right about how you can't make it too fatiguing. It's about finding a sweet spot. It's quite hard to find, but the sweet spot of getting people and media to acknowledge the severity of the crisis, but not going so far as they think it's hopeless, but saying, oh, but we can make a difference. Hard to do. So when working with our clients, we think about it, every single release, interview pitch, whatever it is that goes out there, we try to show, yes, this is a big problem. It's very, very important. However, here is the solution, and here's what we're doing in response. I know that sounds a little bit basic, but really it needs to be something like that, because if you just keep putting out, a lot of the green media in particular that I've spoken to are quite upfront about that, saying, don't, yes, obviously if it's a really big landmark report, then fine, you have to say it, but at least give us some cause for hope within that story. Otherwise it's just too tough. Just a really, really quick one I wanted to add, because I thought what Heidi was saying about how to deal with accusations of greenwashing, how to prepare clients on that sort of thing was really interesting. One other one that I thought I'd offer is role play. So pretend that you're the journalist, a really, really harsh journalist, and grill your own client. Obviously, tell them that you're doing that, and set it up with them, and push and sort of accuse them of greenwash. And if they don't have good answers, then you might need to reevaluate if you're doing that campaign. So apply that pressure to them first and see how it goes. Because as comms professionals, we'll want to know we want it to be super transparent. We'll want to know everything. It's like when a lawyer represents someone in court, they'll want the client to have told them every single thing that could possibly come out in the courtroom. If you're a PR professional putting your client out in the media space, you're going to want to know every little single thing that could come out. So if you can, grill them first.
Thank you. And Ed, you've just answered somebody else's question at the same time, which is brilliant, because Fariba was asking, how do you overcome sometimes the stigma or concerns that media journalists might have when you're pitching certain stories? So that's brilliant. I think a couple of questions that are quite similar, which I'd love to cover. So Amber is asking, she's an upcoming graduate, and she's asking, what type of experience or attributes would you guys be looking for on a candidate CV for a sustainability communications position? I think passion, as we've discussed, seems to be key, but how else can you make sure that you're standing out? Heidi, I'll come to you first.
Sure. I'm just seeing that Amber's asked as an upcoming grad. I'm just thinking at what level you're at. So yeah, if you're kind of fresh from university and you want to go straight into communications, then it's quite hard, I think, entering straight into purely sustainability communications. Just thinking about my own journey, you know, I sort of started in communications and then ended up, luckily, working purely in sustainability communication. So I guess really for communications, you need to have excellent writing skills. I think writing and communication skills is probably the most important part, more than having a sort of environmental degree or some sort of sustainability or master's degree. I think the communications element is probably the most critical if you want to go into sustainability communications. But then I think something that makes you stand out, if you want to go into the sustainability space, is showing your passion for it, as you said, Jenny. So, if you've got any volunteering on there, or, you've done any extracurricular courses, or you've been involved in, anything at university around campaigning, or, all of that will help you stand out more if you want to go into sustainability communications, I would say.
Brilliant, thank you. Anything to add, Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I totally agree with that. And the passion is the bit that I'm always looking for. Why does someone want to come and work at the charity that I'm working for? Why does it, what's driving them? But I do think, so for me, in the charity sector space, obviously we do a lot of advocacy and campaigning. So, I'd be looking from someone from a sort of more medium PR side who really knows is good at building relationships with journalists and the right journalists, and is comfortable doing that and knowing where to go to do that and how to do that. That's really important to me, because ultimately it's those relationships with the journalists that are key for us to get our voice out there, for example. But on the other side, because we're not just living in a sort of press and broadcast space, so much of the world is now communications is around the web, the internet and social media particularly, and so I'd be looking for somebody who has a really creative brain to be able to turn really complex messages and ideas, which climate change offers a lot of complexity, but so do many other issues in the sustainability space. How can you actually turn that into a really, what's the word for it? Yeah, a message that consumers or the public can actually digest easily and actually get you to stand out as well, because there's so much, everybody's talking about, there's so many charities talking about climate change. So where's your difference in the world? And how can you creatively actually communicate that? So creativity is a really, really important part to be able to kind of, think up interesting campaigns, that really stand out.
Yeah, thank you.
I was just I think that's really important, and I'm sorry I missed that point. Just thinking about that, like how to bring stories to life, even people with experience of creating films, and like people that love telling stories through different means. It doesn't have to just be writing, but kind of creating stories for social media through film, or even animation these days. So those sorts of skills could help you stand out. And I'm sure, as Amanda says, that's the sort of thing that a lot of companies are looking for. I can imagine charities, you're desperate for people that can really bring impactful stories to life. So even those sorts of skills would be really great to have on a CV.
Thank you.
And the best is when you get somebody who can bring those stories to life and get the media coverage as well.
Yeah. The dream. And Ed, just coming to you, are there certain attributes you would look for if you were thinking about sort of talented people to join Dark Green?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, two quick things I'll mention. Amanda obviously just gave the perfect example there, someone who's the passion and creation, but also get the coverage. First thing I look for is proof of passion. We talk about passion, but how can you prove it? One thing that really impressed me recently was fairly young, sort of recent grad who approached us, and they clearly are passionate about sustainability because they had already looked up all our clients and had started using a lot of their services. For example, one of our clients is brand called Yo-You, and it's a free app that tells you the cleanest times to use energy. Really, really cool. But they were saying, oh, we love Yo-You, I use it every day now, I've got my family using it, and here's why, and the climate impact's wonderful. That really impressed me, because I was like, okay, this person really, they get it. They actually genuinely do care about it from what I can see. They want to get stuck in. So that I thought was pretty good proof. In terms of on a CV, being able to list either organizations or events or other things you run in that space, or anything like that where you can actually prove it, that helps. And then in terms of the overall skill set, Heidi and Amanda have covered it very much already, but yeah, just someone who's really good, really sharp written communication skills, creative, but good with people. PR is so much about building relationships, whether that's with your clients, with the journalists, or with your colleagues, other organizations as well that fit in between. You've got to be able to get all those relationships in a place where you can rely on them, and PR is not for everyone. There are people who really don't want to do that or can't do that. So you are looking for that blend of communications and writing skills with people skills, which just can be hard to find at times.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm very conscious of time. I think I'm sure, like many people watching, I could sit and listen to all three of you all night, and I'll be sad to finish up. But a final question, I think a really good one, if you'll indulge me, from Ruby, just asking, are there any specific formalized training or courses that you would recommend to people maybe looking to upskill or delve deeper into the sustainability comms space? And that's, to any of you, if any of you have any examples to quickly ring off.
I can just mention one, just because I'm looking myself, to be honest. I'm always looking to do new courses, and that's some advice that I'd give, is sort of never really stop. You can take courses, and I think a lot of organizations now are really open and flexible to you doing more online courses, during work time. So yeah, the one course I've been looking at and that everyone seems to be raving about, and I see it on LinkedIn all the time, is the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Management, I think. And they've got various courses, but one of them is a sustainability leadership management course. It's probably more focused on the sustainability side as opposed to communications, but to be honest, to be a good sustainability practitioner, you need to be really good at communications as well, because you've got to, I think we talked about earlier, there's so much complexity within sustainability topics like climate change, that in order to drive action and behavior, you need to cut through the complexity. So communications will kind of always be part of the skill set that you need as a sustainability practitioner, as well as a communications one. So I would say that's one course that I've been eyeing up. And you can do it online.
Brilliant. Guys, thank you so much, and for kind of taking the time tonight. It's been a real privilege to listen to you, and thank you for sharing your tips and insights, and I really hope that those that are watching have lots of good takeaways. Just thank you to the PRCA as always for kind of having us, and to all of you who have asked questions, who've joined tonight, taken time out of your evening to listen. I know that we've already had a couple more questions that we've not managed to answer. Please do feel free to reach out to all of us, whether that's on Twitter, on LinkedIn, find us and ask questions. And we're all here and happy to help. Also keep a lookout, for future PRCA Next Gen events. We cover a real range of topics. But again, so thank you, Ed, Heidi and Amanda. It's been a joy, and thank you very much for kind of taking the time.